If you've ever used an ice pack to help heal an injury, then listen up. Recent research says that icing an injury may actually do more harm than good. And that's coming from the guy who popularized icing as a practice in the first place.
So you're saying this guy decided to finally chill out.
He put his old theory on ice.
Wow. Things are about to heat up.
All right, well, treating muscle injuries with ice is a pretty recent idea. It came from a book called The Sports Medicine Book that was released by Dr. Gabe Merkin in 1978. And it laid out a thing called the RICE method, which is an acronym that stands for rest, ice, compression, elevation. The book was a bestseller, and RICE became the gold standard of care, especially for muscle injuries. That's why you can buy an ice pack in basically any store these days. Everyone from Little League players to Olympic athletes have used ice to recover from intense workouts. The medical reason behind all this is that cooling is anti-inflammatory. Cold temperatures divert blood flow from injured muscles, which sends it rushing back toward the vital organs. And that minimizes swelling and supposedly speeds recovery. Ice also numbs the area around an injury and temporarily reduces pain, much like an anesthetic would. But in a recent blog post, Dr. Merkin himself basically retracted his endorsement of the I in the RICE method. He argues that research has never fully backed the idea that ice accelerates healing. It might reduce swelling, but that's a cosmetic benefit, not a therapeutic one. And elevation, another component of the RICE method, reduces swelling too. What's more, ice might hinder healing in the long term. In one 2013 study, for instance, icing slowed recovery after an intensive sequence of elbow extensions. Dr. Merkin now argues that while swelling is unpleasant to look at, it's also inflammation, which is part of the human immune system's natural response to injury. He wrote, quote, "Anything that reduces your immune response will also delay muscle healing," unquote. You'd think scientists would have figured this out by now, but research looking into the practice of icing has been patchy at best. That 2013 study I mentioned only had a sample size of 11. Part of the issue is that it's hard to execute a blind study of icing. When you ice an injury, you're automatically prone to the placebo effect, which could lead you to feel better just by believing your injury has been treated. But look, it's still possible that ice has more health benefits than drawbacks under certain conditions. Still, the next time you feel like reaching for an ice pack, you could replace the RICE method with the METH method. That stands for movement, elevation, traction, like with a giant rubber band, and heat. Or you could just wait it out. Your body's pretty good at taking care of itself.
I just can't believe we were here to witness the end of an ice age.
That's pretty good.